Picture this, a country that spent years arguing about immigration, suddenly drifting towards something it hasn't seen since the early 1990s. A world where the number of people leaving could match or even exceed the number arriving. Not because of one dramatic announcement, but because dozens of quiet leavers, visas, dependents, students, employers, are all pulling in the same direction. If you're serious about understanding what's about to change, your job market, your rent, your taxes, your NHS waiting times, watch until the end. Because the real story isn't immigration up or immigration down. The real story is what happens to a country when the pipeline of people starts to dry up. Net migration has already fallen hard from its recent peak. That doesn't automatically mean net zero, but it does mean we're watching a sharp change in direction. And direction matters, because once systems start moving, work routes, student routes, family routes, they don't just stop, they keep rolling. So the real question isn't, is migration falling? It is, what happens if it keeps falling? What problems does that solve? And what new problems does it create? The decline in visas independence. Let's start with the engine room. Visas. Because net migration doesn't change by vibes, it changes when the biggest routes tighten. One of the clearest signals has been the fall in work visa routes that used to drive big numbers, especially in healthcare and care-related roles. When employers can't bring people in like before, recruitment doesn't just slow down, it snaps. And when the main route snaps, something else happens that most people forget: the dependence multiplier. A work visa often doesn't represent one person. It can represent a household, spouse, children, and sometimes other dependents depending on the rules. So when work visas shrink, the total number shrinks harder than people expect. That's why you can go from a slight policy change to a massive numbers drop fast. Meanwhile, small boat arrivals, which dominate headlines, are still a relatively small slice compared to the big legal routes. They matter politically, but the largest movements are typically shaped by work, study, and family channels. And then you've got another quiet factor: timers. Many migrants are here temporarily. Students finish courses, graduates reach their post-study limit, workers complete contracts. When a surge happens, there's often a delayed wave of departures later. So here's the strange possibility. Even if immigration doesn't collapse to zero, emigration can rise as earlier cohorts cycle out. That's how you get a scenario where net migration could drift toward extremely low levels, maybe even a point where more people leave than arrive. Economic and fiscal impacts. Now comes the question that splits the room. Would lower net migration make the country stronger or poorer? The usual argument goes like this: migrants are often working age, so they pay taxes, support public services, and help fund pensions in an aging society. In that logic, migration looks like a fiscal boost. But here's what most viral debates hide. It depends. It depends on age, earnings, employment, and how long people stay. A young working adult who earns well and stays a few years can look like a positive contribution. But if someone stays permanently, they also age into health care and pension years, like everyone else. So the benefit isn't automatic or eternal. That's why the real issue isn't simply more migration or less migration. It's the composition of migration, who is arriving, what work they do, what they earn, and whether the system integrates them into high productivity roles or traps them in low-wage sectors. And if net migration falls sharply, governments may face a nasty dilemma: fewer taxpayers entering, more pressure from an aging population, and public finances that don't balance themselves. That could mean higher borrowing, or higher taxes, or cuts, or some mixture nobody loves. Low-wage versus high-wage migration. This is where things get emotionally real. People love to argue about a migrant as if every migrant has the same impact. But in reality, there's a universe of difference between a high-earning specialist and a low-paid essential worker. High-wage migration can boost productivity and tax receipts. That part is easy to sell. But low-wage migration is where the country runs into a moral and practical wall, because some of the most socially valuable work is not paid like it's valuable. Care workers, support staff, certain NHS roles. These are the jobs that keep life running when families are stretched, when hospitals are full, when parents age, when someone needs help simply getting through the day. And if visa restrictions cut off those workers quickly, the shortage doesn't stay on paper. It hits real homes. Families stuck juggling work and unpaid care, hospitals using expensive agencies, longer waiting lists, and overstretched staff burning out. You rarely go through life crying because you couldn't hire an investment banker, but people absolutely suffer when they can't find care for a loved one. So yes, salary matters in fiscal models, but social value matters in real life. Here's the big takeaway. The UK isn't just changing immigration levels. It's deciding whether it will confront its deeper problems, housing, wages, skills, productivity, or keep patching them with short-term fixes. If you're serious about change, don't just pick a side in the argument. Pick a solution. So here's your challenge. If you watch this far, type "fix the root" in the comments and tell me what you think the UK must fix first if net migration keeps falling. Housing, wages, the NHS, or productivity? And if you want more breakdowns like this, clear, human, and honest, subscribe, because the next few years are going to reshape the country whether we pay attention or not.